G'day, legends. I hope everything is working. We will get into this just in a few moments. We just have to leave a couple of minutes at the beginning of the video to make sure some people jump across who have seen the notification, as we don't have a specific time that we go live each day. Apologies. We will just give it a couple of minutes in the beginning, make sure a couple of people know that we have gone live, and then we'll get into the questions, the news, the updates. Bulldog, Sturmy, welcome for being the first people to join the live. We do have a lot to go over today, stated objectives, as well as a lot of comments from the Secretary of State, as well as the President of the US. Right. Okay. Sorry, just posting in the Telegram to get some people across into the live. I hope that you guys are doing very, very well. So, again, it's still difficult to assess what is going on minute by minute. And as we have stated multiple times, it is too early to assess success or failure. That comes much later. Of course, we have a pretty clear idea of the stated objectives, of one of which is a regime change. As we have stated, that a regime change does not mean a new face. That means it is a new ideology or political outlook. For America, of course, they want a regime who is pro-US, Israel, West. What we haven't seen is what I believe many expected, which was a large anti-original government uprising in Iran and across neighboring states. So far, we've actually seen the opposite. Now, this doesn't mean that we won't see that in time. It just means that we haven't seen it yet. So, legends, we do have a lot to go over. We are on open source intel here, but we also do have several other tabs open from both AMK, the spokesman, Carolyn Levitt, and a couple of other small bits and pieces. We'll look at what Mr. Rubio has said. We'll look at what Donald Trump has said. Of course, he's here with the German Chancellor Merz. So, legends, we do have a fair bit to go over. Just give me a couple of minutes to get this going. Remember, legends, if you're in here and you're early to the chat, we're a couple of minutes in. Remember to hit like, get the chat, so we can push our way up the algorithm before we actually start reporting on the news. I know a lot of people send me updates through to my phone. You're just going to have to give me 10 or 15 minutes, as my phone has decided to install a new update. Right. So let's have a look at what Mr. President Donald Trump says in this. Let me get my headphones. So this, of course, is in the White House with Donald Trump and the German leader.
Did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see...
Can you guys hear that?
We were having to go...
Okay. Let me know if that's too loud or too quiet. I just had to go back over it. Right. So Trump, did Israel, the question's asked, did Israel force your hand to launch strikes against Iran? And this does seem to contradict what Mr. Rubio said yesterday, which I have a tab open that will show what Rubio's response to that is. Eden's Mind says, about time you're on. I had to watch that bum at Agenda Free TV saying IDF news is vetted and tends to be true, contra which he denies every report. I'm actually not familiar with the channel, but thank you for the donation, Eden's Mind. As people are aware, a lot of questions about other YouTubers or channels. I watch barely any YouTube except I am a YouTuber myself, and this is my full-time job. I don't watch any YouTube, and that might tell you a lot about the credibility I put on a lot of YouTube versus reading through reports and books and speaking to people behind closed doors. So let's look at what then Trump's answer to this question is.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first, I felt.
Which did make sense. We had several videos reporting or parts in the video. The video wasn't exclusively this, but I did several videos saying that why a preemptive Iranian strike would make sense. And we've seen both Israel and the US. Israel, of course, tweeted at the moment of strikes that Israel has the right to defend itself. So putting this as a preemptive defensive strike. And what we're saying is it's defense of defense. It's preempting the preemption because they were preempting and we're preempting. You can see how we've ended up in this mess. Again, once that starts, once that preemption sort of ladder starts, it's almost impossible to get off it.
I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people, people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready and we were ready. And we've had a very, very powerful impact because virtually everything they have has been knocked out now.
So apologies, that video was glitchy. That is actually the video this end. It's not the stream. But he says that I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready. We were ready. And a very, very powerful impact because virtually everything has been knocked out. Now, this actually, I was talking to a friend last night who worked in strategy. This is actually one of the problems, he said, with precise strategic strikes after time. Is he said, what can happen, and this is someone who I wish I could have on the channel, but sadly I can't. He said, what can actually happen is eventually you run out of targets. That what happens is these strikes have had a large impact on verified, military, industrial targets. But eventually, even with wars like this, is if people go to ground, there's a mass split up of forces, etc., you're going to actually run few on targets that are worth striking. So you end up then with the outcome of precision strategic strikes being massively limited once you knock out the priority targets and you move on to the alternate targets and then on basically a tertiary targets. Beyond that, you start actually running low on things to target, which actually he said will become a problem in a couple of weeks if this continues that far, that you have this large effect on target in the beginning. And then following that, you actually, as you destroy more targets, there's less targets available. I know that is super obvious, but he said it's very hard against forces like this also. Antonio says, but would NATO Article 5, I would wait to respond. We won't see, well, I think it's unlikely we'll see an action of Article 5 for NATO on this. I don't even think we'd see that if Turkey was attacked. Big Fart says, love the continued coverage and sifting of information. Great work. Thank you, brother. Thank you for your donation, mate. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're sifting through a lot of information. And then I want to go across. So we just watched what Trump said with MERS here. And then this is then Marco Rubio, because what Trump said does really contradict what Secretary of State Rubio said yesterday. Of course, Rubio in simple terms said that Israel was attacking, and what we didn't want was to absorb the response, because if it was just Israel attacked Iran, of course, Israel does not have anywhere near the strategic depth of impact that America can have. So what would have happened if Israel attacked, it would have been limited. Then there would have been a much larger retaliation just due to the amount of munitions that Iran could have got off following that. So instead, when Israel said that we're going regardless, America had to go because the impact on our resources would have been much larger, that we didn't want to absorb that, is what Rubio said. What does contradict what Trump said? Remember, Trump is, well, his boss. Although I do believe, honestly, I think Rubio is likely the most competent forward-facing figure in the administration. And I think Rubio, you can let me know in the chat if you agree or disagree, I think Vance is off the ticket for the next presidency, and Rubio is likely going to be on for the Republicans. So this is what Rubio answers to that question.
Was that Israel was going to strike Iran, and that's why we needed to get involved. Today, the president said that Iran was going to get.
Yeah, your statement is false. So that's not what I was asked very specifically. Were you there yesterday?
Yes, I asked a question.
No, were you the one that? Because somebody asked me a question yesterday. Did we go in because of Israel? And I said, you were asking me that. You for that follow up, and I said no. I told you this had to happen anyway. The president made a decision, and the decision he made was that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ballistic missile program. That Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ability to conduct these attacks. That decision had been made. The president systematically made a decision to systematically destroy this terroristic capability that they had, and we carried that out. I was very clear in that answer. This was a question of timing, of why this had to happen as a joint operation, not the question of the intent. Once the president made a decision that negotiations were not going to work, that they were playing us on the negotiations, and that this was a threat that was untenable, the decision was made to strike them. That's what I said yesterday, and you guys need to play it. If you're going to play these statements, you need to play the whole statement, not clip it to reach a narrative that you want to do, all right?
So he does make a good point that you need to have the entire statement, not to clip it. But in that clip, it was very clear that we had to go in to absorb, to attack overwhelmingly, so we wouldn't have to absorb much larger attacks. Of course, if we saw that, think of the size of the attacks that have already happened across the Gulf states and the Arab states as well, some of which are both, that there has been a lot of infrastructure hit and large effects economically and militarily, that it would have been significantly larger if it was just Israel. Raymond said, just woke up. What is happening with Spain? Raymond, thank you for your donation. We will get onto that. What we do know is Spain, they have been very outspoken against the war in Gaza, as well as from my limited reading this morning. I've basically just got up, had a coffee and done some exercise myself, mate. But Spain, they are refusing for American aircraft to use Spain as any sort of staging platform for strikes into Iran. As we do see, the Europeans are really distancing themselves from this war. To the chickens, all eyes are on Turkey regime change underway. Right, okay, I might need to have a little bit more of a look towards Turkey. I haven't seen any regime change talk in Turkey, but we do know that there are some very powerful players that would like to see a regime change in Turkey. But Turkey is also a very, very powerful country. It is the forgotten superpower in NATO. Everyone, when we speak NATO, talks, of course, obviously, the US. It's 80% of the firepower. Then if you were to ask most people, what are the other powerful member states, they'll start listing Germany, France, Italy. The forgotten one is Turkey. Turkey is very, very powerful. According to OSINT Defender, and according then to CBS, US officials have provided details on what is targeted by USAF B-2 stealth bombers in Iran in the past 2 days. It is C2 command and control nodes of the IRGC, weapon depots, assembly facilities. Iran's rocket programs were all targeted in strikes carried out by B-2s, which is, of course, suspected. B-2 will not fly onto a low priority target. It will only be for the highest priority targets. Remember, a B-2 is a strategic level doomsday billion-dollar system, and that's how we must frame B-2 strikes as well. Now, I'm not suggesting that Iran has something that could take down a B-2, but nothing is immune from a mechanical failure, a bomb bay door getting stuck open, and next thing it's got a large cross section and could be hit. So the strategic importance, the expense, this secret equipment aboard something like a B2 make therefore it only able to strike targets that are of the utmost important to attack. Someone said Turkey is not a superpower. What I was meaning is, as far as the powers within NATO, that of the large powers in NATO, Turkey is absolutely one of them. As far as superpowers, no, but there are no states in Europe that are a superpower. You could extend it if you put in Eurasia. You could classify Russia in that, although it has its status has been eroded over the past couple of decades. Especially, it's been eroding since the USSR. It did increase for a while there, and has more found, I guess, a status quo. But as far as the as far as within NATO, it absolutely is one of, if not potentially the most powerful, except for the US. Kaidar says, Willie knows about the F-117. Yes, of course. Well, that's what we saw was Serbia shot down with, I believe, an S-200, which is an older air defense system, shot down an F-117. Now, I believe on that, we did see a number of events take place. It was a bomb bay door, I believe, stuck open, which increased its radar cross section, so therefore it could be picked up and attacked. Again, what stealth aircraft need to be framed a little bit like suppressors on a weapon. It is a suppressor. It is not a silencer. Your AR, your M4, whatever, doesn't become silent with a suppressor. It suppresses the audio signature, the noise of the weapon system. This is the same idea with stealth aircraft. It isn't nothing. It reduces the cross-section. Now, it can reduce it down unbelievably small. It can reduce it from a truck to a bird, or potentially less, given this is highly classified information. But again, it's not nothing. It just reduces it, therefore making it far more difficult for targeting of not only the radars, but then these systems aboard these missiles, down to, of course, they reduce the signature of the aircraft with the engine vents, etc. This doesn't mean it's impossible, and that's the thing with the B2s. That's my point of they will only strike high prioritized targets, because if a door got stuck open, if something happened, even a bird strike, I know it's going to be too high for that, but even like a bird strike in the front of the aircraft will have a large effect on that. So the target needs to match the risk. Of course, the risk is, well, the largest risk of the F-117, the wobble and goblin, was actually what we saw take place following. Little known, but America directly targeted a Chinese embassy due to reported information that the Chinese had gathered parts or bought parts of the F-117 and was storing it below the embassy. And then that was directly targeted by the US. That's where you'll see, I believe it was in, someone can correct me in the comments if they've got their Google open, was it 99 that the US struck the Chinese embassy? And I guarantee if something happened and an F-22, 35, B-2 went down here, you would see strikes on the airframe on the ground once it had landed, as well as you would see other foreign actors wanting to get their hands on a lot of that technology and information. So correct, 99. Okay, great. Again, just you're going to have to give me a minute on my phone because my phone's all updating and restarting. Democratic Senator, Mr. Richard Blumenthal. I just want to say I'm more fearful than ever after this briefing that we may be putting boots on the ground. I'm no more clear on what the priorities of the administration are going forward, whether it's destroying Iran's nuclear capability, simply its missiles, regime change, or stopping terror activity. What I'll say is I actually think a lot of their goals and priorities, well, their goals are all of the above. The priority well, which one takes priority seems to be a little bit in the air at the moment. What is the primary goal of this? Because it did appear to be regime change. Now, I know Hegseth has said the regime has changed. The person in charge has changed, but the person in charge now, that they hate America just as much as the previous, if not more. Corporal Son says, can we get an F in the chat for the real victims, the influencers in Dubai and the crypto bros? Yeah, absolutely. So it is difficult to know exactly what the end state of this war is. We do know that America want what the wants are versus the realistic end state, and what America would settle with or back out from, and what is achievable without boots on the ground is difficult. As we've said, is you can bomb your way into destroying these weapon systems. Regime change, that is putting a lot of faith and power in the local population to rise up against the regime. Now, that may happen. But again, the regime that needs to change from what it is currently into a pro-West, pro-Israel, pro-America regime, which I said in this part of the world, even in the peaceful states here, is a big ask. So we will see. And what we haven't seen is, and as again, you guys have, I can have a couple of thousand eyes on this looking for me. We have 1,700 people in the chat. So if you're seeing this, let me know. I'll go look at it. Is I'm not seeing protests or uprisings against the regime. More what I'm seeing is not only in Iran, but in Bahrain, where you are seeing pro-regime demonstrations. Now, this may take time. Maybe we'll see this flip, but reporting on what we're seeing at the moment. They told you they told you their goals in the Tucker interview. To the chickens, is that the Tucker with Mike Huckabee interview they were talking of? So, again, it's too early to tell the success of these. I believe Carolyn Levitt made a post directly stating the goals. I'm just going to go back on my face camera because I will try and find that post. If not, I have a screenshot of that post somewhere. She's been posting a million things all night. Let me find that. JCPOA deal, blah, blah, blah. Trump's truth coming. Where did she put these? I can't find it on Levitt's page, but there was a specific outline of what the goals are. Clear objective. Sorry, it was the pinned comment. I didn't look down far enough. Marco Bjorg from Switzerland. Thank you, brother. So, Saturday, President Trump released a statement laying out clear objectives, the American people, for Operation Epic Name. Let me reiterate. So, let's say this is from the most important. Destroy the Iranian regime's missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. So, no ballistic, no cruise missiles, not nuclear, just no standoff weapon systems. Annihilate the Iranian regime's navy. Of course, naval forces is not only for security of coast, but it's also the ability to project power. So destruction of the navy, we've spoken about why that would likely be a priority in this, which the US will be able to do and has struck several ships. Of course, there's still going to be a lot of port infrastructure as well that in the future could still host navy. Ensure the regime's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces. That I don't see how this is going to be fixed from here. Of course, there is support from Iran into these proxies. Of course, there is support. So you may cut off the support, but these proxies, you could delete Iran off a map. You could Control Alt Delete and then end task of Iran. And many of these proxies, they may have slightly less support, but they would still, again, it's ideological extremist groups. That the Houthis would still exist. They may exist in a slightly lesser capacity, especially the Houthis. There's a lot of reason, a lot of larger states, more powerful states than Iran have interest in the Houthis, and then other proxies will still exist. Stop them from making IED or roadside bombs, which have gravely wounded and killed thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. Remember, much of this as well, a lot of it came from Iran, a lot came from Pakistan as well. The ability to stop IEDs is she's referring to more high-end bombs here. So the actual term improvised explosive is wrong. You will never, ever stop any state making a IED because it is improvised explosive device. It's improvised. It could be anything from a mobile phone with the microphone linked up to a thing of fuel. So at the end of the day, that's not going to stop. What she's more getting at is more the manufactured in a factory level bomb. But that's bloody hell's that noise? What did someone say the other day? The fuel bunker's been hit. But you're not going to stop improvised, but you may stop your higher end ones. Guarantee that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. I think this goes a step further to no nuclear facilities. Again, the idea of a nuclear weapon has been spoken about since the early to mid 90s, and it's been imminent. We have seen, of course, the claimed obliteration of those facilities in June last year following the 12-day war and those B-2 bombers targeting those, but they want guarantees that they'll never obtain it or seek the weapon also. Preventing the radical regime and its terrorist leaders from threatening America and our core national interest is a clear-eyed, necessary objective, so that they won't be threatening America. They don't have any of the projected power to threaten America in this. She's probably talking more about American interest in the region and potentially some proxy units that may operate inside of America. She says, killing terrorists is good for America. 49 of the most senior Iranian regime leaders, Supreme Leader Khamenei, have already been wiped off the face of the earth so far in the opening strikes for Epic Fury. I still think they think the Epic Fury name's cool. Like ChatGPT pumped it out and be like, yeah, that's a good name. Finally, while Operation Midnight Hammer, good name, did obliterate Iran's major nuclear site, the regime was fully committed to rebuilding their nuclear program. They refused to make a deal despite months of extensive talk and good faith efforts by Trump's top negotiators. This is something that the media had been reporting for some time, is that they were very, very close to making a deal. Everyone was reporting that we're getting close. And then it's all recently fallen apart. Now, again, I'm not inside these meetings. I don't know how good of faith and where these negotiations were going, but it appeared up until the night of the attack, it appeared that we were getting very, very close. Simply put, the terror Iranian regime would not say yes to peace. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has actively and intentionally facilitated the killing of Americans while chanting death to American funding. Other bloodthirsty terrorists seeking to destroy the United States and all of Western civilizations. Again, capability and intent is an important lens to view this through. Is their intent? There's, of course, a lot of these organizations chant things like this and should be taken care of. Capability, though, is one of the larger balances in this. Prior American leaders were too weak or cowardly to do anything about it. Remember, we were told that because they can't negotiate, then they'll launch a war. Trump is correlating decades of cowardice and holding these responsible for the death of Americans accountable. Their brutal attacks and threats will finally end under President Trump. America will win. Terrorists will be defeated. So this is from Karen Levitt. The reason we go through this is the stated objectives of this. So again, we knew this, but it was missiles, nuclear, Navy, regime change. And as I've said, 3 of those can be bombed into submission to a degree. The regime changes is realistically, the number one priority here is regime change. And that is the one that has the largest cloud over it of possibility, because you can't bomb your way into that. It needs to be that there's enough demoralization, there's enough passion against the former regime that Iranians themselves rise up. And as I stated in my video yesterday, which I hope you have watched, is I'm happy for the Iranian diaspora that they're happy that Khamenei is being killed. That's great. But it's not the Iranian diaspora who are going to be overthrowing and replacing a new government. That's not the ones who are going to be doing it. So it's great for them, okay? But it's not them putting themselves in harm's way unless they're willing now to go back and change the regime. So, and as I believe my opinion puts out, you can't change 1,000 years of thinking. Yes, and what we could see, and just as likely as I think in a regime change, even more likely than a regime changing that's pro-Western, it's likely that there might be a regime change that is just as anti-West, and what happens at that point in time. Again, we will see, and we will see this unfold. I hope that it works out, and I hope that we don't get stuck in what I hope doesn't happen is either we get stuck in a decade-long $1 trillion war with a ending that is, up in the air, or that you bomb the shit out of it and it actually ends up worse than it was previously, which has been many times previously an outcome. Now, this is some news that has come out in the past, say, 90 minutes, is Iranian state TV. They have claimed that the IRGC, it was, shot down an F-15 fighter aircraft. But as we say with any fighters, we need extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So I'd say wait out on that. One thing that is going to be more relevant in the coming weeks is strategic reserves of oil and fuel. In Australia, I saw yesterday, there was a politician asked on how much diesel and petrol does Australia have if all international stocks were cut off. Now, of course, not everything is going to be cut off, but of course this is going to come into the price at the pump, as well as oil prices internationally. And Australia has, I believe, the answer. Well, there was no answer above 34 or 35 days. So diesel, petrol, that's the reserve. We do know other states, Japan, South Korea, and strategic reserves of just oil tend to be up around 200, 250 days. China is potentially around 120 days, and other states sit around 90. Obama Gaming, 49, so nice to see he's taken up a hobby after his presidency, has said you need to differentiate between the administration wanting a Western-friendly regime and Iranians wanting a democratic regime. I think, Mr. Obama, thank you for your question, but I think that I did differentiate that pretty strongly, that there is a want, there's a wish for that regime, but again, you can't bomb your way into that. That has to be done by the people inside of Iran. And America may say that we gave you every opportunity, you didn't do it, so now we are leaving. America do need a clear off-ramp if things go well or if things go poorly. They need to have, if in 4 weeks we're here, there hasn't been uprising missiles keep coming, there needs to be a decision made of, right, and this is when we deploy forces, and this is when we sell a victory of something and move out. What we know is people always ask me about ground forces, and I think it is highly unlikely we will see conventional ground forces deployed. I think that's highly unlikely. Now, could we see special forces carry out operations? Potentially, but Trump knows his political and strategic analysts. They know that a deployment of conventional forces into Iran is political suicide. It would be stepping into a long war is going to be so unpopular. It's going to be protracted. It's going to be bloody horrible. So I think that is highly unlikely. I think it would be more likely if in 4 or 5 weeks they haven't had the desired outcomes, there would be a goalpost shift and a withdrawal from there, more so than a deployment of forces. What also needs to be said is there are not US forces staging, as far as the amount of ground forces needed, staging anywhere near the numbers that would be needed in the region. And it would take many months to build forces to conduct that. And we don't even know where they would stage out of. We have no idea which state would stage out of because, of course, that state that Iran will see as targetable and the Gulf states, I don't know if they would be hugely open to more months of the Strait of Hormuz being closed as well as continued strikes upon the state. So we will see. Trump has tweeted on Truth Social, effective immediately, I've ordered the US Development Finance, the DFC, to provide at a reasonable price political risk insurance and guarantees for the financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy, traveling through the Gulf. This will be available to all shipping lines. If necessary, the US Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. No matter what, the US will ensure free flow of energy to the world. The US economic and military might is the greatest on earth. More actions to come. Thank you for your attention on this matter. So let me get to the chicken's question, then I'll get to this post. Conventional takes 6+ months. Also, what is he going to do? Run for a third term? Well, chickens, if you listen to the leader of California, he regards what you think of him. He is saying legitimately he thinks he's going to try and run for a third term. Well, Trump, when he was talking to Zelensky, seemed to hint at it. And yeah, conventional is going to be at least 6 months. So all this needs to be wrapped up. No matter what happens, this all needs to be wrapped up by the midterms. Now, let's look at this. Trump and the US, that they are providing risk insurance and guarantees for maritime trade heading through the Strait of Hormuz. Let me bring up a shipping map. Ship trackers. This will be a little bit easier. When I put in ship, the first thing that came up, I almost clicked on Shia LaBeouf's Wikipedia. So this is the Strait of Hormuz. Sorry, my map's a bit frozen. There's probably a zillion people on this right now. This is the Strait of Hormuz. Now, as you can see, it is reasonably empty. Now, this is very narrow across. Of course, we have seen the IRGC say that this is shut and that there won't be ships passing through. And we have seen multiple ships targeted. You just need to look at the states that sit in here to see the importance. So this is, of course, Iran. We have Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi, Qatar, UAE, and Oman. Of course, you can see instantly the importance, and Bahrain. You can see the importance of this region here and why this is so important to global trade. 20% of global trade around that can flow through here. Now, one of the risk factors I bring up in, which one is it? In this. So America's going to be insuring this. I don't know how far that insurance goes because there may be a incentive if I had some shitty old oil tanker to go and sink it in here and claim the insurance on it. You see that a lot with some of these shitty Asahi places that are failing. Anyway, so we don't know the extent of the insurance in here, but he does say the US Navy may begin, if necessary, to escort then ships, tankers through the strait. Now, this is when, if you were to see a US Navy ship hit, here is if we were to see it hit, it would be hit. Dara 7678. I've come up with a new phrase, Billy. Please rate it. Instead of shock and awe, shock and cope. Shock and awe was pretty good. but you can tell that the Epic Fury was Hegseth on ChatGPT late at night. So as we know from Iran and the Arabian Sea, that there is a lot of standoff in the US Navy around here because, well, they don't need to be close to then launch power, project power from things like standoff missiles, as well as, of course, fighter aircraft from the aircraft carriers here. And that there is huge risk if ships come close to the coast, because there still are Iranian submarines and missiles, and this is why these ships are standing off. It's not that they can't defend against it. It's just, well, if you have the opportunity to stand off, you stand off. You don't go close. And this is the thing. If they come through this bottleneck here, if they do start providing, how did Trump exactly put this? If they escort through here, as Trump says, if you were to see one take damage, this is where it could happen, because someone, I don't know if I can measure on this map. Maybe not. Someone will be able to tell me the measurement, but this is narrow across here. So the actual time of flight of a system, so therefore the time you have to actually, so if something gets launched from here against a carrier, you might have an hour before it gets struck. Here you might have minutes, if that. So again, this is going to be, if they start escorting through here, that could really heat things up. And again, they may not even just go for the ship. There's a lot, even down to like the success we've seen of Ukrainian drone boats against ships. Now, what we do know is Iran makes a number of weapon systems similar of surface level drones. And again, the primary thing on that is scalability, is how many of them you've got. But even down to just very simple, basically a remote controlled jet ski using civilian parts with a bomb attached to it. So we will see. The Strait of Hormuz, this is a very, very important area in the world. As Mr. Joey Kenny says, Willie, did you know 80% of food is imported into the GCC states using the Strait? Also, 60% of fresh water is not only the exports, they need it. Thank you, Joey Kenny, for the information. And as he correctly points out, yes, that it's not only energy, primarily gas, LNG, and oil flowing out of here, it's everything flowing into here. It's fresh water, it's food, it's other products flowing in. So again, this war's only been going on for about 90 hours at this point, maybe a little bit under that, maybe about 88. But this is a large consideration if this is closed for a long time. The Foghouse says, excuse me, did you see Trump wants to use the US Department of Finance to ensure vessels under the USN escort through the Straits? What the hell are they thinking? Yes, Mr. Foghouse, that's actually exactly what we're going through at the moment from this post here of the DFC, as you correctly point out, to ensure these ships moving through this region. And I wonder, he does say it'll extend to all maritime trade. So he's saying that it's going to extend to all maritime trade for this. How far does that go? What about maritime trade taking oil from here to here? Will it extend to that? When you zoom out on this, you can see why the Chinese have been looking at building that $30 billion canal through Thailand. So there has been a lot of talk. There's been, I think, some movement, but it's more of a ground movement at the moment by rail. But China has been really leveraging on Thailand to make through Thailand here, cut through a massive canal. So they don't have this choke point down around the bottom of Malaysia and up that you can see. Of course, a lot of this pushing through Indonesia, Southeast Asia region. You can see why they are looking to cut through here. There's been movement, but it has to be offloaded, reloaded on ships. You can see why they would be interested in just cutting through. As per, you can see why there's been the cut through Egypt of of course, Suez. So, yeah, Trump ensuring these, that's a big move. We will see how this unfolds in the coming days and weeks. Of course, there's going to be a lot of there's a lot of resources in these states. But once this really starts protracting, and if it starts protracting, if this moves on beyond a couple of weeks, it's going to have a lot of these are very powerful countries. UAE, Qatar, militarily, on paper, they're more powerful than they are to carry out operations. This is a strike in Bahrain that you're seeing with Iranian drones. But economically, they are superpowers. And what I'll check on now, I'll just bring up another tab because I want to look at the gas prices that we are seeing. Trading economics, natural gas price. What I wanted to look at was the UK gas up. So let me close this. Just wait for Yemen. They will close Suez as well. That's a great point. Blood Jemet Peleg. We'll show you that in a sec. So this is what he's speaking about. Is, of course, if we zoom out a lot, you've got a couple of ways to go. You can, of course, come out of then the surrounding the Gulf states in here, moving out through Strait of Hormuz, up through then or out into the Arabian Sea, through the Suez Canal, up into the Mediterranean. Of course, this is Europe up here. Of course, closing the distance between these states and Europe dramatically, then going right down around here around South Africa. The problem is the Houthi rebels sitting in Yemen increasing or the risk of attacks on ships around these regions, of course, dramatically increasing insurance costs, which the DFC for America is only in this part at the moment, and the ability to not close but increase the cost of here. Therefore, ships choosing to go the long way all adds cost to global shipping, global trade, and eventually us paying for it at the other end. Of course, this is the strategic importance of then the only state that recognised Somaliland in Somalia, basically an autonomous enclave, is Israel. And that is in direct competition for the Houthis in Yemen to try and keep this area of the world open. And this is why. Why do you think I'm always talking so much about the North Sea route that connects where China comes up through the Bering Sea, between the Diomede region, through the strait that sits between, of course, this is Alaska. Oh, to move that across. This is Alaska. This is Russia. Up. This isn't a perfect map for it, but up across the top through, of course, the frozen regions, and why both China and Russia are so interested in then the North Sea route. So you're not reliant on these shipping lanes, and therefore being hugely interested in massive amounts of nuclear ice breakers. Okay, this is the UK natural gas prices. Let's just go to 1 week. So you can see that it did have a top of 164. There we go, 161. Is that? Oh yeah, sorry, 162.8 was the top, and it's settled down a little bit to 141. But you can see back up from where has been level since the opening of the war in Ukraine. If we click 5 years, you'll see how dramatic this actually got, that it got up to natural gas up to 640. So you can still see it's way down from its highs of the war in Ukraine. But you can see from the war in Ukraine still to just the average through 23 onwards has been high, and we may see this continue up. We do know a lot of reliance on energy for Europe is coming through those regions. So won't be surprised to see gas increase a lot. Right. Let me have a look, see what some of the other pages are saying. Just need to belt feed through a little bit of what we saw take place overnight. What we're seeing is it's funny this when the initial strikes, you're like, oh my god, look at this hit there, and then after a couple of days it just becomes normal. It's like, oh yeah, normal strikes, whatever. And this is something that a friend of mine in Ukraine said to me the other day about strategic strikes. He goes, mate, it's the lobster in the boiling water. He said these strikes now we don't even think about it. It's just like an average night. We have a couple hundred drones, a couple of missiles, like, whatever. It's funny how quickly you sort of get used to this. What we haven't seen yet is US-Israeli strikes really focused on destroying energy infrastructure, which will come in the coming days or weeks if they're not getting the outcome of which they want. A Pearson saying his gas went up 40 cents in my area. Yeah, there was this politician in Australia on the television, and he was saying that no, Australia has no impact on price at the bowser. The only price will go up is in oil. It will be relative to that. Yet every fuel went up like dramatically. Right, let's have a bit of scroll. So this is Tehran getting bombed last night. Okay, we have a lot from Rubio that we've gone over. Hitting Iran surgically, unapologetically from CENTCOM. A lot of strikes, and there's been actually ground operations into southern Lebanon too. OpenAI CEO, so of course OpenAI, ChatGPT or ChatGPT. Do you use AI? I love AI. ChatGPT defended allowing the Pentagon to use its tools for classified work. I hate the idea of AI in intelligence, surveillance, and tracking, targeting. I tell you, is it Claude? Is that the one where the CEO was like, we are strictly against it for mass surveillance and autonomous targeting? Is it that? Let me look, because I saved the oh shit. Okay, sorry, my phone was on the fritz. Oh, sorry, Cohen, I missed you. Did you see the IRGC claim they've hit US destroyer 650 kilometers away while refueling? Thank you, Keenan. Look, I've seen many claims similar to this. Again, it's an extraordinary claim, and as we say, it would need extraordinary evidence. But thank you. Anthropic? Is Anthropic Claude? Is that the same thing? Let me have a look, because I saved the post where I saw him speaking about it. Anthropic CEOs. Oh, okay. So Anthropic CEOs, Pentagon's use of Claude, refuses for mass surveillance, and then autonomous targeting. And this is something I made a video on the other day, where I said the mass surveillance that AI can do is unbelievable. Unlike the resources needed to survey, to put surveillance on someone 24/7, everything they do, AI can do millions at once to a godlike level. They can target everything. And that's where Jimmy Carr, the comedian, but I think a superior philosopher to comedian, he is right in saying that everyone is missing, well, until recently, where he says we are missing the forest through the trees when it comes to AI. The danger isn't developing a Terminator and it all killing us. The danger is the ability to run a totalitarian regime of mass surveillance, of mass censorship, of mass control has just lowered in price times 1,000. But times 1,000. Even, like the amount of assets that they need in the KGB or the NKVD to be able to listen to your neighbor and this and that, it's not even close to the ability for them to collect everything your phone is in the room on, everything your Wi-Fi sees and hears, everything all at once, statewide. You would never see a totalitarian regime like one that could harness AI's potential power. So, yeah, that's scary. And the scary part with these companies, so you have a private company with all of this. Of course, we know they go to the highest bidder. It's going to be a very, very interesting time. Very interesting time. And that that scares me to no end. Someone said, yeah, technocracy. Yeah. That scares me. That really concerns me. I had a conversation with a contact of mine recently, and he explained a little bit to me about the potential of some of these tools, and I struggled to sleep for like multiple days once I found out so he wasn't speaking on potential. I'm just being careful with how I word this. He wasn't speaking on the potential theoretically. He was speaking on what is in early deployment. So it wasn't, this is theoretically what could happen. He was saying this is already in early deployment. And that case, it was insane. Someone said my audio is gone. Damn. Wait, can you hear me now? Muted? Wait, let me check something. 1 second. I can hear you. Refresh. Okay, not muted. Okay, people just taking the piss, I think. Refresh your things, maybe. So, yeah, speaking about what is already in deployment. And hearing about what is being deployed by foreign actors as well as domestic actors should be a concern. And I can see a realistic idea where your sort of 1984 situation of mass surveillance is likely already there. So what we're looking at here is Brent crude oil. You can see, of course, the early days rise of this war. We're over 1 week here. Sorry, this is it here. You can see a sharp rise. And we were sitting around low 70s, and now we're in the low 80s with a high of, I can't get to it. There, 84, so mid-80s. Of course, what we need to look at as well is Urals crude, although this isn't updated as often. So Urals crude on March the 2nd. So this doesn't get updated as often, but this is, if you want to look at the ability for Russia to fund the war in Ukraine, this is really the graph we need to be looking at. And as long as this is above about $56, I believe, that they are, I might need to refresh I need to refresh my memory on what the Russian budget is based on, because I think it was 56, but I think they downgraded it. But as long as this sits above that, but you need to remember that that's over the year, okay? So people go down here, oh, their budget's not making money. Well, yes, at that point in time, but what you need to do is, let's say 56, they're going off an average price per barrel of Urals crude. And as you can see over that year, that the majority of the time, therefore average, has been sitting above that. And the reason I'm bringing this up, so we don't care about this, I don't care, it is important, it's all connected, is this war lifting those prices of crude. Well, it's going to, we do know the one remaining wonder weapon spoken by the world powers to influence Russia in the war is oil. And this is not a good sign, being the price of oil rising. Another one is, if the oil in here, a huge amount of the world's oil, starts getting cut down, well, these guys will be able to still get a lot of it out and pipe it even across into China, potentially even through the friendship pipeline, the Druzhba, into Europe. So you will see that oil becoming far more attractive now that this is getting cut down. And again, states will leave ideology at the door when it comes to state security, and oil is, of course, a major part of that. Let's just go back to this at the moment. So we have had strikes, drone strikes on the US consulate in Dubai, UAE. It appears to be direct hits. Again, these US consulate facility buildings in this area of the world, these are literally a bomb shelter, especially the one in Iraq. Radija Koitsa, sorry, I can't pronounce your name. Love the content, keep it up. What's your thoughts on Turkey getting involved? And what would Russia and China's game plan be? They won't sit around and let this go on forever. Thank you for your donation. My thoughts on Turkey getting involved, I don't see that they're going to get involved in any kinetic way, same as Russia and China. As far as oil price, as I explained, this has a lot of upside for Russia. Of course, there's downside with a functional partner being under attack. But what we can say about Russia and China is you get an idea of how important Iran is to them if we correlate that with the amount of support they were willing to give them, which is very little. China, as per the interview I spoke about last night, they have I spoke with the guy about last night who's far more knowledgeable on this topic than I, down to they will sit back and watch a lot of this. It's not in their interest to get kinetically involved. But again, if we're speaking about oil here, well, they may still be able to ship it. And Trump, through the DFC, might actually be insuring some of the ships. Again, we're not completely sure on that. And Iran does have offshore facilities to also fill up ships. So that may still, this doesn't mean that it's going to be completely ended. I can't see Russia's pretty extended in Ukraine. I can't see them getting involved militarily. Turkey, I think Turkey, the threat again for Turkey is more what Israel is saying about Turkey. Zelensky must be pissed as how many Patriots missiles Israel got. Well, at the end of the day, we said this during the early days of the war, the recent war in the Middle East and Iran last time. What we said was that Israel is a significant closer partner to America than Ukraine is, and will absolutely have Patriots before Ukraine will. And America, at the end of the day, especially under Trump, they will absolutely provide Patriots to their own bases, their Arab partners, Gulf. There's a lot of overlap in both, and Israel before Ukraine, and I guarantee they'll be able to charge them a bloody killing for them. Any update? Thank you, the Fog Hail. Any update on the 3-time PAC-3 missiles? We're not supposed to be able to hit Bluebirds, managed down 3 by F-15Es without an operator override? No, I haven't had any update yet on what exactly happened to those F-15s that appear to be shot down by Patriots. They are meant to have a friend or foe system. People are saying that it was Q-80 air defense that hit them. But as far as what exactly happened there, as I said on the day, that needs a hell of a lot of investigation because we don't know how that has unfolded. It shouldn't have been able to happen. There's still speculation that this wasn't friendly fire. I think it's likely that it is, but likely that it is friendly fire. But again, until we know the investigation, we won't know. And at the end of the day, we'll probably never be privy to that. IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency director, says Iran's near weapons-grade uranium stockpile restricted inspector access for serious concerns. Well, yes, inspection access was restricted in 2018 following Trump's removal from the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, that was signed in 2015. With the UN Council plus Germany. Macron, actually people are saying to me, go look at what Macron has said. The defence agreements in Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, we must stand by the side. We've decided to send warship to Cyprus for protection. I've given the order to send the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle as accompanying force to the Mediterranean. Right, so France is deploying an aircraft carrier and then a warship. Wouldn't that be within the... I've decided to send a warship to Cyprus for protection, yeah, and the Charles de Gaulle and accompanying force, so that would be the warship. Okay, sorry, I was trying to make sense of that. So France sitting in, will this be for only defensive action? I think likely, but we will see. JHM said, how do you delete Iran? Willie, do you talk shit sometimes? You don't have the critical thinking ability, mate, to understand the theoretical nature of, even if this was removed off the map, talking in a theoretical sense, the actual impact that would have. Willie, do you realise the videos were released today of the F-15s? What videos released today of the F-15? I haven't seen any new footage of the F-15s. Maybe I just haven't seen it. I'll have a look. So 4 of the 6 reserve soldiers in the US Army's 103rd Expeditionary that were killed have been named. Expanding investigation. Oversight Committee is expanding its investigation into the Epstein files. Good time for that to happen while no one's looking. Sorry, let me just hide the spammer. Right. So someone said that there was more footage of F-15. I haven't seen it. That said, I'm less interested in the footage stuff than more the strategic, the parts that impact strategy directly. Remember that a lot of planes go down in war. I don't have direct numbers. Someone here may have better numbers than I, but I think it is likely in Ukraine that Russia has had lost more planes to mechanical and friendly fire than actually to Ukrainian fire. I think that's a likely. Someone will be able to verify those numbers. Right. I can't see if there's any. The Iran Army update is releasing huge amounts of AI footage. Please don't get trapped into this AI slop like this. There's so much of it. This page is pushing it massively. And why push it? Because they're probably making a killing. This has 2.6 million impressions. As much as I support creators making money online, that's one of the problems with the whole creator paid complex is the best way to get a lot of views is just rage baiting. So they've all just fake stuff. So you get a lot of money, and a lot of these, I don't have Twitter, so I have no idea how much these pages make, but probably a unbelievable amount of money. Blah, 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 blah. The boomer bait. That's a good way to put it. White House 8 hours ago, President Trump isn't interested in endless wars. He's interested in ending a decades-long chaos in the Middle East. Critics say Trump's decision to strike Iran is a violation of promise not to engage in forever wars. In fact, the opposite is true. Trump is not starting a forever war in Iran. He is ending one. So, again, as we're saying, is this may be true. It may be true. I think it is. I think it is a gamble. I think it's a risk. We don't know. We can't say that it has failed yet. We can't say that it's succeeded yet. We need to give it time and see the outcome of this. And realistically, to assess the proper outcome of this war is going to be beyond the guns for sign and probably in months or years following as well. I think everyone wants the best for the Iranian population. But we do need to look at also the previous very similar theatres of attack that have taken place in this region of the world, and you can see why people have concern. And many people are saying, oh, people are just dooming with concern, blah, 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 blah. And you can go, yeah, well, we heard all the same shit time and time again in different wars. Under different powers with more public support. Now, the public support part, that is an interesting part. So, again, releasing any poll numbers of support, this is always difficult to get an idea on how much public support there actually is. It's difficult to get an idea behind support when it comes to leadership. Look at Hillary was going to massively win the 2016 election, and of course we didn't see that. But we do know the support in the US for this is low. Some say around 27, 25%. That's what I'm seeing. Some suggest it's lower, some suggest it's higher. What we do know, and I'm willing to state this as fact, is that there's not majority support in the US for this war. And there's definitely not above 50%. I'm happy to state that as fact with everything that we have seen. So this is, of course, going to play a lot into someone's saying I'm a bit quiet. Let me see if I can turn this up. Of course, that is going to play a large role in the midterm, as well as for further actions for support of sustained combat operations as well. And this is what I've spoken about in America. The support isn't large. This is where, when people ask me about would Europe support this, I think that the support for this war in Europe would be even less. Yermak just announced his new position. So Andrew Yermak, former Zelensky advisor. Can someone tell me what his new position is? So, yeah, it's hard to get a accurate reading on how much support there actually is for these strikes. Again, if it ends up successful, people will support it. If it ends up failing, people will say they never supported it. It's going to be interesting to see in a couple of months those who are not analysing the situation, those who are advocating for the situation, both those who advocated for attacks or was it really an activist for not attacking. It'll be interesting to see if they're willing to go back on what they've said following this, if it works out successfully or if it does fail. Blah, blah, blah. Trump and Rubio's messaging has been disastrously bad. Right. Let's have a look at what this Admiral Brad Cooper, maybe named after the actor, has said about Operation Epic Fury. Operation Pete Hegseth.
Good afternoon. I'm Admiral Brad Cooper, the commander of United States Central Command. In this capacity, I lead U.S. military forces in the Middle East. I'm here to provide you an update on Operation Epic Fury, now on our 4th day of execution. First, I'd like to express my deepest condolences to the families and teammates of the extraordinary Americans who've been killed in action, and I'd also like to extend our prayers for a speedy recovery to the wounded. Yesterday, you heard from Secretary Hegseth and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Today, I'd like to give you an operational update on where we are and provide you with some key facts. By order of the President of the United States and the Secretary of War, our military in the Middle East is undertaking an unprecedented operation to eliminate Iran's ability to threaten Americans as they've been doing for nearly half a century. Having spent more than 36 years in the military, I could not be prouder of America's sons and daughters in uniform who are answering the call. More than 50,000 troops, 200 fighters, 2 aircraft carriers, and bombers from the United States are participating in this operation, and more capability is on the way. These forces bring a massive amount of firepower, representing the largest buildup by the U.S. in the Middle East in a generation. In the opening hours of Operation Epic Fury, U.S. Central Command Force.
The amount of buildup here tells us as well about the resistance of which they were facing also. Dara says US-Israeli logging flight hours. Jets need massive maintenance per combat hour, perhaps shortages, consumables, missiles, and attritable parts. Look, at the end of the day, the US Air Force is massive. So is the Marine Force. They won't have a problem being able to sustain a lot of offensive actions like this. Although it is, at the end of the day, they still are flying a lot of hours on these planes, a long way, attritable parts. But the US is built for a much larger conflict and losses than this. Israel's different. They have a much, much smaller Air Force. But of course, everything that the US have on hand, Israel will get in their aerial campaign if they start running out of parts or attritable parts and the maintenance. But the maintenance on these is massive, absolutely. So yeah, that's not it is a consideration, but it's not likely going to have a huge impact. The cost will, of course, the cost is huge. Some of these planes is $60,000-$70,000 per hour of flight time. Some are more, some are less. But the cost is massive. The largest attritable factor for the Americans by a mile is PAC-3s. That is the largest one by a long way.
Forces, together with Israel, delivered overwhelming and unprecedented strikes into Iran. Many of you may remember the shock and awe strikes of 2003. The first 24 hours of this operation were nearly double the scale, and we continue with 24/7 strikes into Iran from seabed to space and cyberspace. Now we're less than 100 hours into this operation, and we've already struck nearly 2,000 targets with more than 2,000 munitions. We have severely degraded Iran's air defenses.
This is one of the points we made, though, is as you attrit targets down, you actually get less targets. So therefore, your impact of strategic strikes actually starts lowering. And if you get to a case where your strategic strikes having minimal impact and things aren't shifting, you get in this weird position. He says here that the air defense is severely limited, but he doesn't say, he hasn't said yet for total like air superiority, because we're still not seeing complete freedom of movement over the skies. I'm not seeing that. It doesn't mean that America doesn't have dominance. Of course they do. But as far as complete freedom in the sky, I have not yet seen this. James said, I've sent you some stuff around Patriot missiles by email. Some insight. Okay, thank you, JSO, mate. I appreciate that. Check out. Okay, we'll look at the Patriot in a second. Thank you, mate. So we'll continue with this.
And destroyed hundreds of Iran's ballistic missiles, launchers, and drones. And in simple terms, we're focused on shooting all the things that can shoot at us. Our B-2 bombers and B-1 bombers have executed uncontested surgical strikes against multiple missile facilities deep inside Iran. And then just last night, a B-52 bomber force struck ballistic missile and command and control posts.
Okay, so but all these, again, can have huge standoff weapons.
We are also sinking the Iranian Navy, the entire Navy. Thus far, we've destroyed 17 Iranian ships, including the most operational Iranian submarine that now has a hole in its side. For decades...
So sunk the ships. He's also claiming the operational submarine. I'm guessing he's referring to the Kilo submarine. We do know Iran operate around 20, I believe, midget submarines also.
The Iranian regime has harassed international shipping. Today, there's not a single Iranian ship underway in the Arabian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, or Gulf of Oman, and we will not stop. We will continue to conduct dynamic targeting operations. We're hunting Iran's last remaining mobile ballistic missile launchers to eliminate what I would characterize as their lingering launch capability. Now, in retaliation, the Iranian regime has launched over 500 ballistic missiles and over 2,000 drones.
So trying to treat and destroy any launch capability. And this is, as we've said, the weak point for Iran is not the missiles or the drones. The weak point is the launches. That is absolutely the weak point. Absolutely a weak point.
To be clear, Iran is indiscriminately targeting civilians as they launch these missiles and drones. You've seen it on TV. The evidence is crystal clear and overwhelming. Having said this, we are seeing Iran's ability to hit us and our partners is declining, while our combat power, on the other hand, is building. And my overall operational assessment is that we are ahead of our...
So he says that their ability to launch from Iran is declining while ours is increasing. It'll be interesting to see what if we see a trend follow the 12-day war. Because remember, in the 12-day war, and we're still very, very early in this, in the 12-day war, we saw initial complete saturation of Iranian missile launches and air defense. And then after about a week, which again, we're not even 4 days into this yet, we're not even 90, I think you said 100 hours, we're not that far in, at least from H hour, is we did see a ability then to start firing those more on a week plus, and that's where we really started seeing. So this is what I'm looking for, is at, like, say, the 7 to 10 day mark, if we see the trajectory of the 12-day war take place. And this is the problem with the offensive and defensive operations. So what the competition in the region is I agree that Iran's launch capability is declining. So we'll call this one launch capability, that is declining with these strikes. The problem is, where does this one, which is the air defense capability, intercept those? Is that declining at a faster rate? Which likely it is. That is what we saw in the 12-day war, was, yes, the ability to launch was absolutely coming down, but the ability to intercept was coming down at a faster rate. And that is what we saw back then. It's likely some of what we're seeing at the moment. So we will keep tracking this into the future to see if it follows a similar trajectory. Tom says, do you trade market at all, Willie, for oil? No, I don't trade anything on oil. I'm a very, very dumb ETF investor. That's about it. So Noel says, B-52 conducting sorties, air defense is practically zero. It would depend on what that is dropping, but this is where we didn't see those involved in earlier ops and last year too. So yes, that does tell us a lot about the degradation of that air. One of the main factors that took out the air last time was the fifth column and Mossad agents working inside of Iran, which we didn't see so far at all in this war. That was one of the largest impacts on Iranian AD in the 12-day. And what we actually spoke about this in a podcast within 2 days before this launching, was a lot of the S-300s got taken out in the 12-day war. We don't know if any of them have any newer systems in large numbers have actually been delivered back to Iran following the large elimination of those systems in 12-day. So not surprised to see that the air defense has been heavily limited. But again, I'm not saying that it's completely gone, at least at this point, at least over Tehran. It's likely to happen, but we'll see. And this is, Obama, he points out, this is what I was getting at to Noel. B-52s can still fire standoff missiles, like we see the Russian Tu-95 fire. The Tu-95s aren't doing World War II bombing runs, and B-52s can do the exact same thing. 510 says, nothing done about ETFs. Well, I don't know enough about markets, mate, so if I have any leftover cash at the end of the month, which is not that common, I just put it in a ETF that tracks the S&P or the Australian 300, and that's the extent of my investing. And I likely would do better doing that than trying to trade my way individually. JL Furistack says, sorry if you already covered it, but what are your thoughts on the report CIA is encouraging Kurds to revolt in their region of Iran? I feel like Turkey won't accept anything like that. We know the Turkish are big fans of the Kurds, if you want to put it one way. So, well, this is the thing: is there after the kinetic strikes, there needs to be influence to encourage pro-Western forces inside to overthrow the government. That is likely. If the regime is still in power at the end of this war, it won't matter how many missile facilities are taken out. If the regime is still there, it's not going to be a huge victory. That is the priority number one is regime change. That doesn't sit with a single man. It sits with an ideology and a government. So there will be absolutely grey zone warfare operations to try and encourage more pro-Western forces to rise up against the government, as well as protesters. Right, let's have a look.
Our game plan. Along the way, every single branch of our military is achieving unprecedented success. I'll talk about just a few of them. Our naval forces have deployed multiple waves of cruise missiles, obliterating Iranian command and control and air defense capabilities. From 2 aircraft carrier strike groups, we're squeezing Iran from the sea and have them backed into their own ports. U.S. air forces are doing what they do best, executing a high volume of airstrikes right into Iran. Operationally, the 2 most powerful air forces in the world, the U.S. and Israel, are dominating the skies of the world's largest state sponsor of terror.
Look, the world's most powerful air force is America. The second most powerful air force in the world is by no means Israel. By no means is that not even by a stretch is that true. Like US, yes. Second is US Marine, and then the third is China.
Our U.S. Army soldiers are defending ourselves and our partners, and in a historic first, the U.S. Army fired long-range precision strike missiles called PRISMs in combat, providing an unrivaled deep strike capability.
They can be lased as well from drone.
Also for the first time, U.S. Central Command's drone task force, called Task Force Scorpion Strike, launched countless one-way attack drones, achieving massive effects.
Now, I'm not saying these didn't achieve massive effect, but you have to see some of the irony on this specific Lucas drone, the American version of the Iranian drone coming in. Like, this is basically an exact analog of a Shaheed.
Attack drones, achieving massive effects.
Sorry,
I'd like
US
to point
Navy.
out these drones.
Thanks for the correction, as in game. So yes, first is the American Air Force, and then the American Navy by a shot. And then you've got China, Russia, India, probably several others before you get to, if you're talking most powerful air forces in the world, the French and the Germans will come way before Israel.
Drones were originally an Iranian design. We took them back to America, made them better, and fired them right back.
So he says, originally Iranian design, we took them back to America, made them better, and brought them back. But I'd say extended the price by about 10 times.
At Iran. I just could not be prouder of our men and women in uniform, leveraging innovation to create dilemmas for the enemy. There is no adversary too determined, no mission too difficult for the great soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Guardians, and Coast Guardsmen that make up the most powerful military the world has ever seen. Our military objectives are crystal clear, and our people are executing an immensely complex and historic mission with relentless lethality, conviction, and professionalism. And we've just begun. But I have the utmost confidence that we, alongside our partners, will absolutely achieve our military objectives. To all our warriors, Godspeed. Thanks so much.
So, Admiral Cooper gives at least the American breakdown on more the military side of what is taking place. Speaking about the naval and air strike, the aerial strikes against Iran. What will be an interesting factor is if we do see some of the surrounding states start getting involved, like if the UAE eventually do start targeting in Iran. Yeah, so US administration, military protection, maritime escorts through the Strait of Hormuz. It'll be a very... sorry, I haven't got the right screen up. This is an interesting spot. And I can tell you that though the shore the shore offensive systems in Iran will want to be massively suppressed before this starts happening. Willie, have you done an update on the potential Shia uprising in Bahrain and its suppression by Saudi? No, Zach, I haven't done. I think me and Zach spoke about it last night. I think if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I did see a lot of reporting on that in Bahrain, there has been a Shia Muslim uprising and that Saudi is reportedly having to send forces across the border to try and actually suppress that uprising. Which, of course, you may see a lot more of this. Remember that as soon as you launch operations like this, it is a stone in the pond and you will get ripples coming out. Those ripples can be for the good, they can be for the bad, but you will get more chaos before you get order. So then this page, which is very pro-Israel, says CENTCOM calls USAF IAF the two most powerful air forces in the world, which is just objectively wrong. Rage baiting the US Navy, I see. Yeah, rage baiting. This guy says Pakistan, but yeah, no. The US, absolutely. USAF, yeah. USAF, then the US Navy. I'm actually not sure what would be. So I would say that China is absolutely third position. Russia would be the fourth position. India would be up there. Pakistan would be up there, absolutely. Germany, France, they're high. The ability for expedition, that would be the big one. Germany doesn't have. Japan doesn't have. I'm trying to think. Who do you think would be in the position? Yeah, someone said Google it. I'm trying to think because Google, it's always going to be a little bit skewed. Most powerful Air Force. People do get an idea of the difference between though bubbles of power of air dominance and as well. Oh, this is going to take into account helicopters too, though, I think, versus air dominance and superiority. So let's have a look at this. So this is on WDDMA. So it says USAF, US Navy, Russian Air Force, US Navy, US Marines. Now this is with everything though. I just want actual like Air Force, not choppers too. Global statistics. Right, let's have a look at this. So, most powerful. It's the same source, but this is the source that we saw. Honestly, I actually think that the Australians would be significantly further up this list with the Wedgetails, P8s, some of those capabilities. Chinese naval aviation, that would have to be above anyone that doesn't have a aircraft carrier. Also, Pakistan would be much higher. Germany and France, much, much higher than this. That'd be higher than Australia. Also, a forgotten factor in this is I know this isn't what we're talking about, but also is the location that you are as well. Yeah. People do have a skewed vision due to the opening days or around Russia's ability to drop munitions as well and gain superiority, like localized superiority. But as far as air combat experience, the Russian pilots and Ukrainian pilots have the most air combat experience of anyone in the world. Is the Ukrainian and Russian pilots by a mile in an incredibly challenging environment. The environment that Ukrainian and Russian pilots are flying in is the most complex air environment of all time. And it is very interesting to see relatively very few planes actually going down. Brent, let's go back to the oil. Someone did ask, have I spoken about oil? Yeah, I had. When we're just tracking this sort of day by day to see where that's moving. Right. Oh, sorry, this refreshed on me. It'll reload. Right here, this is what we've been tracking, but we need to zoom in on a week to see where this is moving. If we zoom right out, you can see the severity of the opening days of the war in Ukraine and where this is now coming back up to. Palsy says Ukrainians and Russians are both ballsy pilots, deserve respect. Oh, mate, the air operations over there are an absolute bloody nightmare. Joey says, Willie, do you think the Chinese lack of involvement in conflict, or desire to become involved in geopolitical situations in military will actually hinder them when conflict comes along? Not particularly. Why do I think it won't hinder them so much? Because they're not going to have a huge attrition of forces or systems if conflict actually does come along. There's always this idea that I see again and again and again about the Chinese combat forces, like the Chinese ground forces, speaking on a troop level, don't have any ground combat experience. And what I say is the only countries that have conventional ground combat experience to a peer on peer, the only ones who have this is Ukraine and Russia. They're the only ones that have this to have operated in that environment. That's it. And any war with China would be a protracted war. And what we do say in the lessons of protracted war is the opening days, months of conflict are not determinative. And another very important lesson a lot of strategists speak of is we have to assume that the opening strategies and tactics are wrong. We just have to be able to let it be very malleable and be able to learn lessons quickly. That the importance in a protracted great state war is not in having the right tactics at the beginning, because you have to assume you're probably going to be wrong. It's the importance of learning quickly and implementing. Tron says, what's your thoughts on Afghan and Pak conflict? Pakistan is now dealing with shit that they literally bred for decades and decades. So yeah. You know, a lot of the plastic explosive, a lot of systems from, if you and I talk about this in Afghan Pak, look back at the Soviets and Afghans, the coalition in Afghan, Pakistan had a lot of involvement in the ability to cross border and the ability for training and arming, all of that. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Right, so satellite imagery of Planet Labs has confirmed claims made by a number of Iranian affiliated channels over the last few days. Iranian one-way attack drone or another projectile was able to successfully impact and significantly damage US Space Force Block 5 ballistic early radar warning system, which is worth $1.1 billion. It's the largest radar operated by the US in the Middle East. Remember, this was claimed in the opening days. This was claimed. It's like that three-sided prism-looking radar thing. And yeah, it does appear that this has taken significant damage on that phased array. That's very interesting. So a $1.1 billion radar. I'm just going to send this to a friend. Sorry, that's what I was doing. Jason said, check out this guy, habitual line crosser on X. He says he's good for Patriot system. Let me find this. Can't find it. hell's his HLC actual? Okay, followed by Aussie Defender. This must be the right one. Grading for beta breath. Okay. I'm just trying to see if this guy is who I've been told is to look up on any questions about the Patriot launches. Okay, he's resharing a lot of tweets about the US military against Iran. Right. Trying to see if he says anything about the It's funny, there's a lot of denial about that radar being hit, but now it's been shown. Right, okay, I'll have a scroll through later on, and I'll check and see the information on there, because it might be a very good source for Patriot. HBL is a former US Army Air Defense dude. Oh, great. Shit, I was doing something. I was going to send this this to a friend that this has been hit. CENTCOM. Oh, yeah, it's just an update of what CENTCOM has actually said. There is a page too. I'm not sure who's set it up, but there is a page that is tracking the cost so far of the war. Last time I saw was a couple of $1 billion, but a radar like this, of course, is going to skyrocket that, as well as things like F-15. People have asked about Ukraine updates. I'm too focused on this war at the moment. The Ukraine updates will 100% come. I just haven't... sorry, I wanted to check something else. I just haven't checked Ukraine at all. I have no idea actually what's happening at the moment. I did that last update a couple of days ago, and then I'll probably maybe tomorrow, depending on the level of operations happening here, but I don't have the mental capacity to track more than really one war at a time, or nor the time in the day to do so. Gayes says, what happens if the Saudis directly strike Iran? Well, you're still going to have a lot of problem with Shia in the region too, but of course it drags you in, and therefore they can target your facilities, because of course Iran has targeted many civilian areas across the Gulf, but they're primarily with the strategic level systems, not really the drones, but being US facilities, and that's at least what their rhetoric is, that there could be a draw-in of war. And of course, the response we may see if Saudis attack is an attack against Saudi energy facilities. Dankistan says, how severe would a crisis in Iran have to be before Arab states or wider Muslim groups get involved directly? I don't know. That is what that is ultimately what the Americans are really trying to do, is to create the conditions inside of Iran that groups within Iran rise up and install a pro-American, pro-Israel government. That is the ultimate goal of this war, is to have a new regime in Iran, or at least not a regime that can develop any weapons. So there's sort of two going on here. There's two ways of that. You either have a regime that's pro-you, working with you, or you create the conditions that you could never have any level of governance that could ever develop a system that could threaten you. So yeah, there's a lot. But thank you, Dank. But could we see other countries get involved militarily? I think it's unlikely at the moment, but you never know. Let's have a look. Drawn by Daniel. 2600 says, Willie will look for the smallest gain Russia made and gloat about it while completely ignoring Ukrainian gains. 2600, if you actually look through my videos, I was one of the only ones actually reporting on the large Ukrainian gains down in the south, even when maps like Deep State, Ukraine's own map, didn't report it. I was going through that at the beginning of all the videos last week. So, yeah, no. Look at why don't you go get stuck into the mappers who have ignored all the maps for the last 3 years? I love all the people who started mapping on YouTube, but as soon as the mapping doesn't fit their narrative, they're like, I'm now in politics. Drawn by Daniel says, is anything of interest going on, IDPs, NDPs, displaced persons or military at the Iranian borders of Iraq, Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan? Drawn, actually, good question. I don't know, but you could see, as this war grows, you could see significant amounts of displaced peoples at borders, and this can absolutely have a surge in refugees and immigration too. Fortec News, Q-80 fighter shot down the F-15s. Right, I'm going to wait on further confirmation of that. It's difficult to get an idea. Blah, 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 blah. Where is... Oh, sorry, I'm trying to keep up with this. Char, good to have you in the chat. Char, good to see you, mate. Speak the truth, bro. All the places we went are Russian held now. A lot of time in Seversk, yeah. That's under Russian control as of a couple of weeks ago. Maybe a month or two back. He lost all that desert. Someone left a very funny comment last night and said, Willie, what would be funny is do a linear warfare bro analysis of how long it will take to win in Iran. That so far there's been 0 kilometers made, so therefore it's going to take X amount of time. Let me read this. Blah, blah, blah. Where's... Corporal says, this is a Russian MOD account, can confirm Willie's in our pocket. Yes, Corporal. Lol. Thanks, mate, for the donation. I've never beaten the allegations that I work for about 10 intelligence organizations, including the SBU, Mossad, any Russian or any Chinese ones. Ryan O'Brien says, have you seen any confirmation Iran hit a US destroyer? No. I've seen no confirmation on that. As I've said, I think it is unlikely. It's not impossible. But when you balance against the amount of resource needed to do so, the amount that's going to be intercepted, it wouldn't be one of your primary targets. It would have a massive impact informationally, absolutely. But it is unlikely, I think. Ojan Dobrik on the PayPal, thank you, has said 1999 US bombed Serbia with 17 NATO centers for 72 days. The Brigadier, only one tank didn't make it out following agreement withdrawal. All the other drove on their own. US bombed thousands of decoys. McGregor said the same info. Why agree for... Sorry, I'm trying to read through your message on this. It's difficult. Why agree for Serbia to withdraw? It does appear that Serbia was one of the only examples of where strategic strikes has had the outcome of which was looking for, but there was a lot of other factors behind the scenes, which is where a lot of doubt is brought in by geopolitical experts on that as well. But you can see, the amount of 70 days plus of strikes taking out facilities, and that's where strategic strikes alone rarely, if ever, create the desired outcome. It may do, but we're not sure. Thomasgen says 1.5 trillion years to take Iran. Yeah, legitimately. Thank you, mate. As well as Liam Nielsen. Following up my question from yesterday regarding Israel forcing US hand, does this not indicate Israel control over foreign policy and not Israel being under US influence? There could have been a third option, once US discovered Israel intent. So this is where we get the contradictory statement between what Rubio said yesterday, what Rubio said today, and Trump. What we do know is Israel has before forced the US hand. We know this happened in the 12-day war. The reason why the hand was forced in the 12-day war was Israel begun strikes on nuclear facilities in Iran, but as we said, and we were critical of at the time, has begun an operation of which it cannot alone succeed in doing. That Israel did not have the weapons nor the platform. It didn't even have, nor it didn't have the great ordnance, the great penetrator ordnance. It didn't even have the plane. They don't have a plane that could carry it either. So the US's hand was forced in the 12-day war to come in and end that with B2, or else if they didn't, Israel would have done potentially a very one-way mission of land attacks towards those facilities. But if there's no doubt of the massive amount of foreign influence over America. It's massive, massive amounts. Thank you, Liam, for your wonderful donation, mate. I appreciate that. No need to donate, guys. There's no need to. But I do really appreciate it. Alec is now saying the Wall Street Journal is now saying to the WSJ, also known as the SJW, is now saying it was a Q-80 F-18 that took out 3 by F-15. Something's not passing the sniff test. I will say it's not passing the sniff test. How many planes do you need to take out before you're an ace? Do we have a Q-80 ace on our hands, or is it more? Is it 5? So let me have a look at that. Q8 F-18. Let me see if that's what they're reporting. Because even then, like it doesn't seem that the F-15 had, from the very limited footage we have, didn't even have like pre-warning either. 5. Okay, so people saying it's 5. So there's almost a Q-80 ace. If that is the case, I think it's probably more likely from a Patriot, but we're not sure. Oh no, here we go. A Q-80 Ausint Defender is saying a Q-80 F-18 Hornet was the cause of an accidental shoot down of 3 Strike Eagles in a friendly fire incident over the country, not a Q-80 Patriot surface-to-air missile barrier that had been reported, according to the Wall Street Journal. One F-18 launched 3 missiles against 5 F-15s. All 3 aircraft were hit going down, but their pilots ejected. Incident occurred soon after multiple Israeli drones. Jesus. I bet that pilot's in a world of hurt. $350 million worth of planes going down. Oh, God. Right, okay. Well, that's what Wall Street Journal's saying. I'm very surprised that there wasn't more ability to be able to avoid those missiles. Does this then destroy the reputation of the not the reputation. F-15 is an unbelievable aircraft, but the kill ratio of the F-15, I think it does. Like at the end of the day, it was locked onto and shot down. Yes, it was friendly fire, but it still has taken the aircraft down. Because I think it had 108-0 was the F-15's record. We did hear rumor on the opening day. We did hear that it could have been a Q-80 F-18, and it appears that it may be the case. Damn. I don't know how. Seriously, like that. I don't know, but it would seem suspicious after the first one. There's going to be some dramatic plane cope. Right. I'm just answering a couple of messages at the moment. CENTCOM update. I'll get to that in a second. Apologies. Right. So, yeah, so big player. Still can't see exactly how that F-18 has actually gone down. Someone says, oops, Q-80 Shia pilot. Honestly, like, I don't know. It seems the fucking things aren't adding up. 3 of them? Like 1? But yeah. Alex says maybe it was a ghost of Tehran. No, it's the ghost of what's the capital of Kuwait? Where was this shot down over? It's the Kuwait, a ghost of Kuwait. Samuel Hyde shot it down. I did see someone saying this is Ayatollah Sam Hyde with like a generated image. The Shiatollah. You missed the part where he fired on 5 F-15s. Really? Is that right? Someone's saying that there was a part where the Kuwaiti pilot fired on 5 of them, or hit 3 of them. Sam Haidullah is the next supreme leader. Right, here we go. Breaking. Kuwaiti fighter jet mistakenly shoots down American F-15s. F-18 fighter jet was the cause of an accident to shoot down 3 F-15s. F-18 pilot launched 3 missiles against US aircraft. So, okay, so some are saying 5. No, so it seems at least from this 3. All 3 went down, but their pilots ejected. This happened soon after Iranian drones. One striking a TACOP center. Actually, this incident, we struck one of the tactical operations center, I believe. Yeah, this is the one that killed the 6 American service members. Kuwaiti officials were on edge when their radars detected flying jets on them. The incident is under investigation still. Yeah, that's... Ooh. It doesn't pass the sniff test. It doesn't pass the sniff test. It may be the case, but yeah. Tom Jin is saying, is it a Kuwaiti Mossad agent? That'd be a long operation to get into the F-15 fighter role. Is Tom Cruise living in Kuwait? Maybe so. He's going to go steal an F-14. Dog says, NATO aggression in Serbia brought the people closer with an unpopular leader. He was on his way out. Regards, it's just extended it. Greetings from Serbia. Thank you, Dog Lesty. I don't speak about it too much because my reading on the situation has been very limited. I know that it is a very complex situation. But yes, brought unpopular leader and pushed out. Just like myself and Sack went over last night. Are we going to see a pushover of leadership? My girlfriend just messaged me and said petrol is currently $1.90 a litre. I'm not sure what that translates into in American gallons. Let me ask ChatGPT. If petrol is $1.90 a litre, how much is that per gallon? Is there any indication of boots on the ground? Thank you, Juice Slater. No, and I don't think there will be for a long time. At the end of the day, it's a long way to stage troops. It's to stage troops to go into on operations like this. We would know for months for build up. There hasn't been enough. People saying over $2 in Sydney. So that is $7.20 per gallon. Okay. Someone in America will be able to tell us what your fuel price is at the moment. But yeah, $7.20 a gallon at the moment, around about that price. So there's people suggesting that there was Mossad operations into dentists to apply GPS trackers in teeth, and that's how they could have tracked Khamenei. $3 a gallon. So yeah, it's more than 2, sometimes 3 times the price of fuel here. So yeah, $7.20 a gallon is what the Australians are dealing with. So yeah, fuel is always very, very expensive in Australia. Everything is expensive. Gas is expensive. Electricity is expensive. Crazy. Thomas says $1.57 in Queensland last week. Now it's $2.15, 14. Mate, very expensive. This is the thing with Australia that annoys me to just no end, is why I understand why things are expensive in many countries. But in Australia, gas being expensive, electricity being expensive, like what? We have the largest reserves of these on Earth. We export so much more of it, and it's so expensive here. It's unbelievable. Like not only fossil fuel, but renewables. We have just legitimately unlimited resource of it for our population. It's unbelievable. LNG, this is someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 99% sure that I'm right. That Australia, so if I go turn on, I have a gas stove in my house. If I go turn on my gas stove, I am paying more for that gas per unit than someone in China pays for their same unit of gas that is our gas. So it's more expensive per unit for it to get pumped by a pipe into my house for me to use than to turn it into liquefied natural gas, put it on a ship, sail it to China, de-liquefy it, and pump it around. That they are paying less per unit than I am. I'm pretty sure that's right. That like Australians pay more money on the beer tax, on tax on beer, which is Australian pastime, than we actually make off tax on the export of our gas. Isn't that insane? Like, is that not absolutely insane? Someone says, I'll buy an EV bike. But electricity is just as expensive, man. Foghouse says that. No, what makes any effing sense? Australia shipping LNG to Canada, East Coast. What? Like, yeah, why would we be shipping LNG that far? It's ridiculous. Yeah. And our companies make unbelievable money. So we have Australian companies. Like Australia is a very small country, 26 million people. And we have some of the largest companies on earth, like BHP, which is a mining company, one of the largest companies on earth. I believe Australia has 2 supermarkets, Coles and Woolworths is what they're called, 2 primary ones. There's independents, but they're the big ones. And I believe they make more money than some of the American supermarkets that cater to an audience of 15 times the size. Isn't that just insane? It said, you pick your government, why do you complain? I've never voted for the government has been in power. So I vote, and I've never voted for the government that has ever come into power. So I think I get to complain. And I served the country at a time of government I didn't vote for. So yes, I'm going to complain. blah, blah. Someone says, stop whining. No, I will. Someone says Aldi. Yeah, that's like a German supermarket that's been big for the last decade here. No competition. Yeah, that's the problem. We don't have enough competition. It's like our airlines. Our airlines are ridiculously expensive. Unbelievable. It cost me more to fly to Sydney recently than it did for me to fly internationally to America. It was a bad flight. I had to fly. It was a last minute thing. I had to fly, but my flight to America was about $850, which is a very good price. And I had to fly to Sydney for an emergency and it cost more. It was, it's unbelievable. And that's a 2-hour flight versus a 17-hour, 20-minute flight. Thomas said the thing people need to understand outside of Australia is that most of us are now practically homeless. Well, it's not practically homeless, but it is that to purchase and own a house in Australia for most people has become only a dream through inheritance. Most people will inherit a house, but the average house price is well above $1 million. And so is the mean. The mean house price is above $1 million in most cities. Like I said, I believe the entire world is at a point of which we have the least competent leadership, but at the most critical of times. Juice says prices make young men like myself not have faith in the system or confident in the future. Makes me feel like why I'd fight for my country, and that's a big problem if we ever have to mobilise forces. Yes, this is something I spoke about with this, particularly the Brits. As I said, UK speak a lot about deploying forces in war. Yet, if they do that, they're going to have a mobilisation. And what I say is, well, you've destroyed the nation and demoralised young people for the past 20 years. I don't know how many people are actually going to be keen to die for you guys. Like, how many people right now would be... So at the end of the day, the people you want to fight, or the people you rely on to fight, are young men. In the UK is young white men. And you spend a decade and a half just destroying everything in these guys' lives. And then if you go to war, these are the ones you want to go and die on the front line somewhere. Good luck. Go around and ask how many young, motivated, patriotic young guys in the UK would actually sign up to die for Starmer. Really? Good luck. One of my friends says, imagine rocking into work the next day and be like, yeah, Mohammed smoked 3 US fighter aircraft yesterday. Fucking crazy. So Mohammed from Kuwait has downed more US fighter aircraft for friendly aircraft than the past 50 years. That's correct. Yeah. I think tomorrow, unless something big happens overnight, I might do a catch up in Ukraine. As I've stated for the last in these videos, I've been focusing significantly in the past 96 hours on the war in the Middle East, as this is, the biggest news for a long time, biggest news of the decade, really, for America. So tomorrow, unless things really shift, I might just keep up to date to see what's actually happening, because I haven't looked whatsoever. So sadly, these are the 4 US service members that had been killed in Kuwait. This is during the incident with the F-18, it sounds like. defense contractors are now looking for Kurdish-speaking employees with security clearance. So someone asked before about trying to support the Kurds to have an uprising. That may be how it looks. But again, that's going to leverage Turkey for a lot as well. See, I think Zelensky needs to approach Kuwait and be like, right, we need that pilot. That's the guy we want. Can he fly over our sky? Right. IRGC forces. Okay, so Rerum Novarum, he's saying IRG forces have moved into Kurdistan province in Iran, told the residents to evacuate, setting up positions, preparation for a ground conflict. The CIA has ordered evacuation of stations that are within Iranian ballistic missile range. See, one thing that Trump said yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, maybe yesterday morning, he did say that the largest strikes are still to come, but I believe he said it would come in the day. So we may still see a lot larger strikes take place by the US to just try and suppress and destroy remaining systems. So that is something that I will be tracking. So we do have, and I'll report on this tomorrow in a Ukraine update, we do have numbers coming out regarding net territory. So it appears from some initial numbers that it was less than 1 kilometre square. And remember, this is a net figure that the ground made by, so Russia made 340 squares, but there was also then 290 recovered by Ukraine, but then an increase in grey zone too. So the actual net shift has been massively limited this month. The thing is, what I think we will see is, and this is something I've been speculating on for about 3 weeks, is I think that we will see AMK and Syriac have a low net figure, if not a negative net figure for Russia. But I think that Deep State won't be able to show that because Deep State hasn't shown or updated at all the Ukrainian offensive in the south because it never extended the Russians far enough to show that this month's data figures, last month's data figures, the Feb data figures, are going to be very, very skewed. Roman says, cooking my tom yum soup before going to sleep. Thanks for your do. It's not boring. Thanks, Legion. I hope it's not too boring. I know there's lulls in this. Not everything can be happening at once, but I appreciate that massively. Said, side note, Tyler Oliveira's Patreon was deleted after posting a video about the New Jersey Jewish community. I did see that. I haven't watched his video, but I did see a lot of clips going through the online community, not only of the video, but of his Patreon apparently being removed also. Notice how no one had a problem with it when he was talking about the Amish or the Somalians. I'm sure it's just luck, though. Right, so Ausint has been a warning 7 k's east of here. So this is the Strait of Hormuz. Vessel being struck. Unknown projectile. Damaged steel plating. No fire or water inside has been reported, with crew reportedly being safe. DeMarcus says, Willie, can I have an update, please? I think the largest updates we have is on an American space array radar being confirmed hit. It's a $1.1 billion radar, as well as the 3 F-15s appears as being reported by the Wall Street Journal as being downed by a Kuwaiti F-18, not a ground air defense system. We've seen increased strikes overnight against Tehran. Of course, we've seen Iranian strikes carried out over the Middle East. So you're seeing this back and forward. There's reports the IRGC are moving into Kurdish-controlled areas also. So it's just all things heating up at the moment, but nothing massive breaking, at least at this. And and another part I forgot that is important is the US is offering insurance for any ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz, and potentially the US Navy will be providing security for those ships moving through as well. Give Kuwaiti pilots your enemy. Well, he's obviously a skilled pilot. That's what I said before, is that's the pilot I'd want. He's a fucking skilled pilot. Right, I desperately need to go and take a piss. Are we going to get another Hegseth press briefing at 8 a.m? I'm not waiting up for that. Okay, so we'll leave this here, and I'll duck off, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Right, thanks, gents. Right, we're back. The world hasn't ended. Although, I think it is going to be leg day for me in a couple of hours' time. AMK is still sleeping like a baby by the sound of it, with no updates from himself. I think he was up very, very late. So important update, the decline in missile siren rate in Israel continues. Right, so of course a decline in missile siren rates, that does mean that there are less missiles and drones coming in. And this is what we've said, that it's not really particularly the missiles that are the problem for Iran, it's more the launching stations. So I'm just reading the chat regarding a lot of like the shipping is going to be an interesting part of the shipping is going to be the American insurance and also the risk of guiding these ships through the strait. The CIA has been arming Kurdish fighting force to spark a popular uprising in Iran, backed by US and Israeli warplanes. Iranian Kurdish opposition forces are expected to take part in a ground offensive in western Iran in the coming days. A senior Iranian Kurdish official told CNN weapons have been smuggled towards Kurdish armed group in Iran. Yeah, so that is looking like the uprising is going to be a CIA-backed Kurdish uprising. Which is what we have said, is it needs to be an uprising from within. Will there be enough power to implement this? Well, we will see. And it'll be interesting to see what the Turkish think about this also. Right, I just want to grab this text for a second. Is there a map showing all the strikes? Not that I have. Sorry, I'm just doing something on my phone. We've got a lot going on at the moment. You got to remember that I get asked a lot of stuff and get sent a lot of information privately also. Be interesting. Yeah, people are saying that the what we've seen with the Kurds fighting in Iraq and Syria as well. How much faith can they actually have in prolonged support for a long time? And people saying, yeah, they always get the shaft in the end, which appears to be true. So this is, of course, is in Tehran. We've had a lot of strikes overnight. Again, like we said before, it's interesting when you become used to war. You're like, well, it's just another strike when it is actually massive. Yeah, you do need to remember too that the Kurdish was some of the largest. It might be the largest stateless peoples in the world. And it's always been very suppressed, particularly by Turkey. There's a lot of Kurds live in Turkey, a lot in Syria as well. That's why you said a lot of foreign fighters go and fight too. So there's always been this overlap of the Turkish operate outside of NATO in strikes in Syria. And what I've always said is you shouldn't be able to do that. You can't turn on and off your defense protections or your offensive ability, offensive requirements either. how many of the early foreign Ukraine Legion guys are fighting with the Kurds? I can't give you a number, but a significant amount of foreign fighters in Ukraine did fight with the Kurds at one point in time. A significant amount. Just wait. I've got to write something. Yeah, the concern for the Kurds is getting abandoned, like has happened time and time and time again. Thanks for working hard to keep us all updated. Yep, apologies. I've been on and off the stream a little bit, but we are hitting 2.5 hours. CENTCOM says destroys Iran's most active submarine, leaving it with a hole in the side. Yep, we watched that from that American brigadier, was he? But Iran does operate a number of smaller submarines, which can be very, very deadly in these waters, especially if more ships, including warships, acting as a guide to move through the Strait of Hormuz. So the US House of Reps is set to vote on an Iran war powers resolution at 1600 Eastern Time, only needing 51 votes to advance to the other legislative body, the Senate. The resolution, championed by the Democrats, will require US forces to be removed from hostilities with Iran until such actions gain congressional approval. This is something that I don't really understand, is what happens if this moves forward. If 51 votes advance the legislative body to the Senate and it doesn't get, what happens then? Of course, this becomes a lot easier at the moment while Trump holds the House and the Senate, but after the midterms, this is why this had to be done before the midterms. This is why me and others have been saying if there's going to be war launched on Iran, which obviously now yes, but it had to be done prior to the midterms. So what happens in this if it goes through and then the law says they must be removed? What happens if they don't? Someone says there's been little talk about US submarines are out there, some with nukes. Yeah, well, that's submarine's job. The Chinese subs, British subs, Russian subs, American subs, at least the nuclear power submarines, they are a doomsday machine. They're not there for small tactical actions. They're there if the end of the world has happened and right, let's fucking level Moscow. You know, that's what they're there for. F-35B has engaged, which is a UK F-35B, has destroyed an Iranian drone over Jordan. I've got to make a note because I have to make a phone call a little bit later on. My grappling system. I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill Schoolhouse Rock. Okay, thank you. I don't get the reference, but cheers, mate. Cobra Command, thank you for becoming a mini Willy. There's a lot of what I'll say about the idea around submarines is there's a lot of propaganda that goes around actual submarine capabilities and it's loud and it's this and it's that. There's a lot of propaganda around subs. There's even states, and I know this for a fact, There's states that actually release their own negative propaganda about submarines to try and decrease the concern of foreign actors. This is something I remember hearing about years ago, is that it's actually quite common for a state to release fake propaganda about the about capability of submarine of, oh, it can't do this, it can't do that, it can't do this. So it makes states think that, oh, we don't have to look for it here, here, and here. And I was told this especially about the Australian subs, that their capability far exceeds what we'll ever say that they do. But we also try to downplay the capability as so they can have more unimpeded actions also, which I found very, very interesting. Because there's two frames. You either talk up a weapon system or you can talk down the weapon system. And there's pros and cons of doing both, which I found very, very interesting. Australia's superpower status when once our population is about 20 times. I tell you, if this, because there's a lot of reports of another F-15 going down. I tell you, if another F-15 goes down in Kuwait, honestly, the American Air Force needs to withdraw its planes out of there. Like, because it's if there's another one, you're either dealing with weaponized incompetence or active targeting. Solar Bear, thank you for your donation. I'll get to it in 1 second. He says the vote won't get out of the House. Too many Zionist cucked Dems makes you think if Israel used a nuke, would the US global powers actually do anything about it? And this is it's a reasonable question. Is there's a lot of paying off on both sides of this. Will it actually ever get out of the House? I tend to agree with Solar Bear that I don't think that it will either. And if there actually was a nuclear weapon used, what would anyone actually do about it? Probably very little. The difference would be, though, Solar Bear, is that then sets a massive precedent. And you know what would make the cost a shitload lower for offensive soldiers in Taiwan? You know what would make the cost a shitload lower for offensive actions in Ukraine? Exactly those systems. So people would be cracking the shits about it. But if it did, we don't know. I know there was a lot of rumors. About that the explosion we saw in Beirut that destroyed their economy was some sort of a system like that. Oh, yeah. Okay, how a bill becomes a law. Right. Okay, I'll watch that a little bit later on. Someone said you have to watch the link that you didn't understand. Right, will do. Someone says, it's a perfect time for China to take Taiwan. Will they act? No. Highly unlikely they'll act. One, it would take a long time for them to get ready to do it. And secondly, it doesn't fit the Chinese strategic action of taking Taiwan. I spoke about that at length last night with a CINO expert. And as Weiwei says, they plan to govern it, not destroy it. Exactly. And they don't see the people there as the enemy. They see it as they are just Chinese under the governance. And they don't want to destroy it. They want to govern it. This is why Taiwan is such a difficult operation for them, is they're like, well, we want to control it and we want the people, but the destruction in doing it is going to be astronomical. What am I reading here? Yeah, well, all fertilizer. Like, yeah, absolutely. But there's a lot. What I will say is the situation in Beirut, there's a lot of foul play that went on with that. Willie, if you got drafted to Iran, what weapon system would you want to carry? Knowing the hills in Iran, something fucking light. But obviously, it comes down to the weapon. It doesn't matter on the weapon system. It matters of your competence on the system. So, if you were to deploy me right now, I'd want the same F-88 that I carried in Afghan or that throughout my career, because there are better weapon systems. Like, absolutely, there are superior systems to it. But it's something that I've used extensively. So it's that. Or Mag 58 machine gun, but I'm not carrying that up a hill. Thomas said, if Russia did nuke Ukraine, what would happen? Well, this is something that has been theorized by a lot of people. What would actually happen? And it would follow the idea of de-escalation through escalation, or escalate to de-escalate. That the powers then are facing two questions. If you launch a bomb like that and it explodes somewhere, you've got two options. You either go down the path of, you can see my head where my headphones have been, look at that. You either go down the path of mutually assured destruction, and that's a calamity for the world, or you have to then de-escalate the situation and look for an off-ramp, and most likely it would be looking for an off-ramp. This is where you'll have some of your more extreme viewpoints saying that the way out of this war is actually to drop a nuclear weapon and threaten realistically the mutual assured destruction, and therefore it would force an end very rapidly to the war. The problem with that is most likely that is what would happen, but you can never be guaranteed one's not coming back the other way. So obviously, as you point out, it's just speculation. But it's been speculated about extensively over the past years. It's been one of the most speculated parts would be what would happen if it was a very small yield weapon in like an empty paddock somewhere. So you just fire one, empty paddock goes off, then what? And at the end of the day, Thomas Jen, a very similar situation happened with this with the Otterschneck. The Otterschneck has significantly less battlefield qualities than it does symbolically, because that can carry a nuclear warhead, and it shows that it's impossible to intercept. It can arrive in minutes, and that's the threat it's being sent. So it's along the same track of thinking, and many, and including myself, have speculated about what would be the actual situation of that. Alex says, if it became Australia and US boots on the ground, it is likely to end up like Ukraine with FPV drones being the main killers. Would Iran scale up FPV drones quicker, or our slow to change guys? Look, at the end of the day, in Ukraine, the FPV drones still are not the main killers. It is still artillery. I know there's a lot of speculation about this or that. Maybe at the moment they are, but overall, through the whole war, like the battle of the war, the main killers on the ground in Ukraine has still been traditional tube artillery, both mortar, SPG, etc. So that is still a very important piece to make. And drones, ISR has made this just more lethal with being able to target and also see. And of course, lethal kinetic drones have of course a huge impact. Would that happen? Yeah, there would be a hell of a lot of drones, and in those environments would be very, very deadly in heavily urbanized areas as well as mountainous terrain. Yeah, absolutely. We have been very slow to adapt. And large bureaucratic militaries are incredibly slow to adapt, unbelievably slow to adapt. So there is huge incentive for other states to have their own intelligence operations to bog down America. So if America and Australia and partners, whoever, like there is, of course, huge incentive for Europe and America to bog Russia down in Ukraine. There's as much or more for Russia or China to bog down America in Iran if they went boots on the ground. So there would be a huge grey zone operation by your intelligence services to get the Iranians' FPV drones to bog it down. Absolutely. Foghale puts out a good point. One of the problems is you only see the successful drone strikes. There's a lot of unsuccessful ones. Yes, absolutely. So I'm just looking at messages coming through at the moment. There was a gaggle of like Iranian air defense got smashed. Reuters citing a source. Pentagon is working on requesting an additional budget of $50 billion to compensate for weapons depleted in the war in Iran. Again, this is going to be a large unfold. We will see exactly what's going to happen. B-52s in theatre. Yeah, the one of the theatre officers did explain that. Again, B-52 can carry both like gravity weapons, like just traditional bomb for bombing runs, and also standoff weapons. I still would doubt that they're willing to risk a B-52 dropping just gravity weapons at this point. It's still very early in the war for that. I'd want to be pretty confident that the air defense is completely gone before start putting something that big and that juicy into the sky. Iran has made erroneous claims they use both Ghadar 380 and anti-ship missiles at US destroyer, refueling ship standoff in the Indian Ocean. Well, it's currently unlikely it's true. We're seeing a similar pattern in this conflict. As we saw the conflict with the Houthis, Iran Houthis make claims of successful missile strikes in the news are either disregarded by the recent recipients of US strikes due to their erroneous nature, or reports of successful interceptions come soon after. What? So claims are either disproven or proven. Oh, yeah. Did I read that wrong? Make claims of successful missile strikes and the news is either disregarded by the recipients due to their or reports. Okay, well, I don't know. What we have seen is a number of reports come out that have then been false and come out that have been then true. We had this like the F-15s, but again, we will get evidence in time. Someone's saying they trust anything at this point. Don't trust anything from anyone. Or everything from anyone. Victory said, can you explain the crowd as infantry that most of all countries' regular army is just simple men? not the same as special forces shown in movies. People keep joking about Russian troops as junkies, and it's just nuts. The infantry is just made up of regular dudes, but this is something I'll give too. The special forces are regular dudes too. There is this tacit understanding within the military that the special forces, they're just regular dudes who are highly motivated and have gone through some very exceptional training. But as far as are these 6'4" super soldier, whatever, they're just regular dudes who are so super motivated, super fit, gone through a different pipeline. But as far as the regular army is just a reflection of society. It is just the regular society. That's all it is. Someone said, who will fund Ukraine now? It was significantly funded by Europe post-Trump's election. I do wonder, because we do know that Iran does have a huge network of underground tunnels, how many weapon systems that they will be able to pull out in time after significant excavation work. So once the openings to the tunnels are excavated from strikes, how much may be able to get pulled out? Because as we know, B2s have likely been dropping, likely the B2 will drop munitions that other aircraft can't. So it's like, why are you going to put that in the air and risk it over another aircraft that can drop it? So potentially the mass ordnance penetrators, the MOP, and what do they try to do is destroy underground facilities that may have weapons in them. So there might be a heap. Willie, what are your thoughts on the Kurds and a possible attack? Well, they need to get a regime change somehow. So it's highly likely that intelligence services are supporting and arming the Kurds for an attack. The Kurds are one of, if not the largest, stateless peoples. We know the Turkish won't be a big fan of this. So, again, will that be relevant to this? Not particularly. Long-term, potentially. But there's going to have a hell of a fight on their hands. They've been fighting for a long time, but it's going to be a hell of a fight. And there's no guarantees of success at this point. That's the thing, is there's never a guarantee of success. Things can move very quickly and go south very quickly. We've got so many examples of this. And the opening days of a war are will not indicate the closing days. Absolutely not. Nor will they be a prediction of what happens in a decade. Again, I'm seeing people ask about ships being struck. Again, there's probably targeting at them, but as far as actually confirming a strike, we would need a lot of footage. Let's go back down. Let's see what the UK gas is doing. So it does appear to be on its way back down after initial shock. Again, initial shock in the market will likely stay up, and then we may see it. Will depend on the Strait and depend on Saudi closing gas facilities as well, long term. G'day, Willie. G'day, mate. Hope you're doing well. Well, legends, what do you think? Do we call it there for the day? Do we call it there? And if things start happening a little bit later, we will come back online. I do want to get a leg session in, a bit of reading, a bit of writing, as I've been a little bit slow on that for the last couple of days. So I think we might do that, and then we will come back online later, if and when things start kicking off again. Easy. Someone says, you do you. Yep, we will do that. Legends, thank you very much. I hope you are looking after yourselves. I hope that you have a great, what day is it? Wednesday. We'll come back in a couple of hours. Most likely come back in a couple of hours when things start kicking off. I don't actually know. Let me look up. What's the time in Tehran? It's 5 a.m. So through the day, yeah, we'll likely come back. I'm going to go to the gym, get some food, get a coffee, and we'll see you later on. Okay. Thank you, legends. We'll see you soon.